Hello there, I'm Enrique, and this is News Pulse, the beating heart of the news from Ukraine and for the world. EU member states are truly tired of Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, said member of European Parliament Tineke Strik. According to her, there are at least 19 countries that are ready to consider depriving Budapest of its voting rights in the EU that Orbán turned into complete blackmailing. My colleagues looked into whether this scenario is realistic after all.
Since mid-April, Hungarian authorities have begun mailing ballots to citizens. The form contains a single question: do you support Ukraine joining the European Union? All adult Hungarians are to receive the ballot and a return envelope by the end of May. Prime Minister Viktor Orbán has already taken part in the survey, publicly voting no. The marked no box was visible in a photo the Prime Minister posted on social media.
Our opponents, the Brussels bureaucrats and their domestic agents, are doing everything they can to push Ukraine into the EU. The question is whether we can stop this and whether we can protect the Hungarian people from the dangers this brings. Only the Hungarian people can decide Hungary's fate.
During the referendum, Hungarian authorities intensified their anti-Ukrainian media campaign and ramped up fear tactics. A list of alleged threats believed to come with Ukraine's EU accession was published as part of the campaign.
The threat is enormous. Ukrainians will soon flood the job market. Jobs and wages will be at risk. Weapons, organized crime and drug trafficking are also concerns. And all the EU funds that we, Hungary, are supposed to receive will go to Ukraine. Tamás Mendzser, Fidesz party spokesperson on Facebook.
Hungarian opposition party TISA organized an alternative poll called The Nation's Voice. According to party vice president Mark Radnai, more than 1.1 million Hungarians participated. One of the questions addressed Ukraine's potential EU membership. More than 58% of respondents voted in favor.
In the event of an election victory, the results of this poll will become a cornerstone of Tisha's policy. The future Tisha government commits itself, knowing the exact conditions when this issue will actually need to be resolved, to hold a legally decisive referendum on the issue of Ukraine's integration in the EU and to present its result.
Hungary is not just blocking Ukraine's EU membership bid. In recent months, Budapest has regularly vetoed Brussels' decisions. On March 6th, during an emergency European Council session, Prime Minister Orbán refused to sign a joint communiqué supporting Ukraine, effectively blocking its adoption. The statements about Ukraine had to be issued in a separate document, signed by 26 of 27 EU leaders. Hungary also delayed the renewal of EU sanctions against Russia, only agreeing to unblock the decision in exchange for concessions from Brussels. If Budapest follows through on its threats to oppose future sanctions, the broader EU and G7 could be significantly affected.
Blocking the renewal of EU sanctions would leave G7 and EU governments on the hook for multi-billion euro loans made to Kyiv that were backed by Russian assets. The EU and G7 last year used profits rising from about 260 billion euros of frozen assets worldwide to underpin a 50 billion euros loan to Ukraine. If the assets are unfrozen, the EU and the US would each be liable for 20 billion euros of the loan, while the rest would fall on other G7 members. From Financial Times, citing the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Estonia, Margus Tsahkna.
The European Commission is now working on a contingency plan in case sanctions renewal fails, or if Budapest blocks the EU's 17th sanctions package. There's also growing discussion within the bloc about potentially suspending Hungary's voting rights.
The idea remains at an early stage, but informed insiders think it will never happen because rescinding voting rights requires the anonymity of the remaining 26 members. Some think a reckoning will come if Hungary seeks to veto the extension of sanctions against Russia, including the freezing of 210 billion euros of Russian central bank assets held in the bloc, from the Guardian publication.
Article 7 of the Lisbon Treaty, effectively the EU's constitutional framework, does allow for a member state to lose its voting rights. But there's also another way to bypass Hungary's repeated vetoes. Currently, the EU operates on the principle of unanimity, meaning a single no vote can block collective decisions. According to several Western media outlets, the EU is now considering a shift toward majority voting instead. Reported by Valeria Nekipolova, UATV News.
It burns and it explodes. That's how this week began for not only Ukrainians, Russians also. On Tuesday, explosions thundered in the Vladimir region on the territory of the 51st Arsenal of the Main Missile and Artillery Directorate in Russia. And already on Wednesday, next episode followed. Drones attacked a plant in the Special Economic Zone Yelabuga in Tatarstan. This is where they assemble Shahid drones and Geran's attack drones for strikes on peaceful Ukrainian cities. So my colleagues will inform you more on the topic.
A state of emergency has been declared in the Kyrgyzstan district of Russia's Vladimir region, and residents of 7 villages have been evacuated. Following a fire at the 51st Arsenal of the Russian Ministry of Defense's Main Missile and Artillery Directorate, explosions continued throughout the night and well into the next day. Shells detonated and scattered across the surrounding area, some landing as far as 6 to 7 kilometers away. Several exploded directly on private properties. Locals captured video of a massive cloud of smoke resembling a giant mushroom. All roads into and out of the district's administrative center had to be closed. Notably, the arsenal is located just 97 kilometers in a straight line from Moscow.
Еще один взрыв. Вот такие вот снаряды прилетают. Это Федоровская.
Another explosion. These are the kinds of shells that are landing here. This is Fedorovskaya. Look at this kind of shell.
Russia's Ministry of Defense attributed the explosions in the Vladimir region to violations of safety regulations, announced even before a special investigation commission could complete its work. The 51st Arsenal is a strategically significant facility for Putin's military machine, covering 3.5 square kilometers. It housed 45 separate storage facilities, including fortified bunkers and 30 ammunition storage sites. The arsenal also included a laboratory with control and testing equipment.
Хранились там ракеты.
The site stored missiles, including those for S-300 and S-400 air defense systems. It also housed aerial bombs and munitions for systems like Grad, Uragan and Smerch. So a wide range of ammunition. The arsenal had the capacity to store up to 264,000 tons, though that doesn't mean it was fully stocked. The war has entered its 4th year. Ammunition comes in from factories, undergoes scheduled maintenance here, and is then sent to the end user.
The next day, drones attacked the city of Yelabuga in Russia's Republic of Tatarstan. Authorities imposed restrictions at the Nizhnekamsk and Kazan airports, temporarily suspending all departures and arrivals. The Russian Ministry of Defense reported that one drone was shot down by air defense systems. However, local residents posted on social media that they had seen at least 4 drones. It's worth noting that Yelabuga is located on the right bank of the Kama River, nearly 1,200 kilometers from the Ukrainian border.
Yelabuga in Tatarstan, where Russians manufacture Shahed Geran drones and various decoys, and where production has significantly ramped up, was hit. Over 6,000 Shahed Gerans were produced in Yelabuga in 2024, along with thousands of decoy drones. In 2025, the Russian goal was to produce 8,000 to 10,000 Shahed Gerans annually and around 15,000 decoys. Andriy Kovalenko, head of the Center for Countering Disinformation at the National Security and Defense Council.
The Yelabuga is a special economic zone and a source of particular pride for the Kremlin. It spans over 4 hectares, with most buildings shielded by special anti-drone netting. Nevertheless, drones have already reached the area. In April 2024, the target was a drone assembly plant producing kamikaze drones labeled as Geran-2. Explosions, fire, and thick black smoke filled the sky. That attack had already happened. At the time, local authorities urged calm, claiming the situation was under control and that such incidents wouldn't happen again. Reported by Irina Yusupova, UATV News.
United States stock markets have shown growth, and Asian exchanges have in turn finished trading positively as well, reports CNN. The reason is a change in rhetoric in the White House on the issue of trade duties on Chinese products. Well, in particular, US President Donald Trump announced a partial reduction in tariffs. At the same time, he emphasized that the complete cancellation of tariffs is not planned. Well, How did China react to the statement of the American leadership, and what did the head of the White House say about the tariffs imposed on China? Nikita Skoblikov is happy to inform.
Tariffs of 145% on Chinese imports are too high, U.S. President Donald Trump has stated, adding that the situation needs to be adjusted. He expressed optimism about resolving the trade war with China. At the same time, Trump declared, "If they don't make a deal, we will."
145% is very high. It'll come down substantially, but it won't be zero. It used to be zero. We were just destroyed. China was taking us for a ride, and just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. We're going to be very good to China, have a great relationship with President Xi, and I think they're going to be happy, and I think we're going to live together very happily and ideally work together. So I think it's going to work out very well. But no, it's at 145%. There will not be anywhere near that number.
On April 2, 2025, President Trump announced new import tariffs on goods from more than 180 countries, justifying the move as necessary to protect the U.S. economy. An initial 34% tariff was imposed on Chinese goods, prompting a reciprocal response from Beijing. Currently, U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports have reached 145%, while China has imposed 125% tariffs on American products.
The tariffs will trigger sharp price increases, worsening the U.S. economic outlook. Moreover, with fixed purchasing power, any cost increase will naturally lead to reduced consumption. Simply put, goods won't sell. As a result, prices will rise, but products will remain on the shelves, which will result in stagflation, a phenomenon in economics.
U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent believes that the current trade restrictions between the United States and China cannot last long. Both sides will need to find a path toward de-escalation. He suggests a deal could be reached within 2 to 3 years. Meanwhile, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt stated that preparations are already underway for a trade agreement with Beijing.
We're doing very well in respect to a potential trade deal with China. As I mentioned, there have now been 18 proposals in more than 100 countries around the world who are wanting to make a deal with the United States of America. And the President and the administration are setting the stage for a deal with China. So we feel everyone involved wants to see a trade deal happen, and the ball is moving in the right direction.
In response to the shift in Washington's rhetoric on tariffs, China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs stated that Beijing is not seeking confrontation, but is also not afraid of it. Spokesperson Guo Jiakun emphasized that if the U.S. truly wants to negotiate, it must abandon threats and coercion. Dialogue, he said, is only possible on the basis of equality, mutual respect, and shared benefit.
If the U.S. genuinely wants to resolve issues through dialogue and negotiations, it must stop threatening and pressuring China. Cooperation must be based on equality, mutual respect, and mutual benefit, declaring that they want to strike a deal while continuing to exert maximum pressure. That's the wrong approach to dealing with China, and it won't work.
As the U.S.-China trade standoff continues, Beijing has reportedly found ways to circumvent American tariffs, according to Reuters. There have been documented attempts to relabel Chinese goods as South Korean exports. South Korea's customs agency reported $21 million worth of violations in the first quarter of this year, with 97% of those shipments bound for the U.S. South Korean and U.S. authorities have already held a meeting to coordinate joint investigations. Reported by Nikita Skoblikov, UATV News.
It was Henry Keane in News Pulse. Goodbye and see you at the next beat.